Hey guys and girls, Board now back with Rachel McDonald for a special review of sorts. Today we will be talking about the original Jurassic Park from 1993, the Steven Spielberg one. There's mine, I've
Matching.
got the set. And yeah, this is actually going to be a start of a new franchise, and that's because there is a new Jurassic World movie out this year. It's the third in the series of that set of like Jurassic movies, if you like. So to build up to that, we're going to do the whole franchise. So we're going to do the original today. We're obviously going to do the sequels to that original movie, and then we're going to do when it got rebooted, Jurassic World and those movies. So we're going to work our way up. Is it summer the new movie's out? It sounds about right. Or
Yes, yes.
okay,
Well,
so
winter here technically, but summer where you
when
are.
okay, yeah, depending on what part of the world you are in, yeah, that's fair. So yeah, this was Rachel's idea, and it's an exciting one to do because it is one of the big movies from our childhood, and I'm sure we
Yes.
can have a lot to say about memories and a lot to say about the movie because obviously it is one of, if you're gonna introduce someone to Spielberg, it is one of his cornerstone movies and one of those very unique type movies that sort of signifies everything that when Spielberg is on top form, that he sort of does really well. And I think just as a family movie, a hybrid movie of like family adventure, kind of coming of age, but also as certain bits are quite scary as well. I
Hmm.
think as a horror movie, it has some good moments as well. So it's a nice little balance. It's a really sort of fine sort of mix and the sort of family movie that maybe you don't see very often now, where it does seem to have a bit of everything for all the family. It seems to be something that over the years Spielberg has done really well. So I think this is definitely an example of what you would describe as Spielbergian if you were to sell the core sort of appeal of Spielberg. It has that sense of wonder with the music and with how
Mm.
the dinosaurs are created. This obviously changed the game for dinosaurs in movies. It sort of took it to a
Yes.
whole new level, the design of it and the dinosaurs and yeah, just how vivid and profound they are.
At the cinema, I was too young. So 1993, I would have been seven, turning eight. So a little too young to go and see this, but I did see it on TV when I was 10. And I remember just absolutely loving this film, but also being so scared by this film. Like I've heard people say that like Jurassic Park is like a horror movie in disguise, and I can kind of see that because there are some scenes that are so terrifying. And one of my vividest memories was lying in bed after I'd watched it, and it was like late at night, and like every little thump I heard, I was like, oh my God, it's a T Rex. T Rex is coming for me, because, oh, hello. You coming to say hello? Hmm? All right, so because
Hello.
yeah, because like every that scene with the T-Rex where you hear the thudding, like it was so effective. So I just remember lying in bed and every thud that I heard, it was like, oh my God, T-Rex is coming to get me. Completely irrationally, because obviously no T-Rex is around, but I just remember being so scared by it, but also just loving it. I'm a little bit of a dinosaur nerd. I've got a little bit of Ross from Friends going on. I think dinosaurs are
Yeah,
pretty cool.
yeah,
Yeah, and
me too.
when I
Yeah.
was younger, I used to have like a set of encyclopedias, and like one of them was like just on dinosaurs. And I remember I used to read that one like religiously and like loved looking at all the different illustrations. So this movie was like really good. And as I got older and I just kept rewatching this film, I swear with every rewatch, I just fell more and more in love with it. It is such a solid film, and it's so amazing. And I think it's one of those films that you can watch in childhood and love it, and then you can watch it in adulthood and love it, and it really stands up. Sometimes childhood films, you get older and you realize they really are just childhood films. This one isn't. This is one of those
It
films that you
holds up.
can watch it
Yeah.
Yes, it holds up. It feels almost timeless, you know. It just at any given age you can watch this film and it is still amazing. So yeah, my earliest memories are just loving it, but also being terrified by it because and we'll talk about the scenes as we get into the movie, but some of these scenes are just so effective and they're just so scary. So I loved it. What about you? Did you get to see this one in the cinema?
I did. Yeah, I do have
Amazing.
quite vivid memories. I've actually seen this 3 times now on the big screen. I've been
Awesome.
quite lucky because when they brought it back, a few years ago, I saw it then.
Yeah.
I also saw it twice originally, and so I think this is one of those where it's maybe borderline for someone who's 8 or 9, like maybe depending on the kid, you could see it, but
Yeah.
there are certain scenes that maybe make it a bit much if depending on the kid. But I guess because, yeah, I'm a little bit older, so I was like probably 12 or something. So that's
Yeah.
probably the ideal age. And them in this film might have been my first experience of them. And
Yeah.
the dinosaur, the creature design is so good in this film, and just
Hmm.
to see it up there on the big screen, it's just so vivid. And I mean, when we were watching it last night, like Cindy had a good line in it, and the line was something like, "All the dinosaurs in this movie are adorable until they're not," type thing, and that sort of sums it
That's
up. Where
true. Yeah.
they do go from actually being quite cuddly and friendly 1 minute, but then they can turn on you the next, and
Hmm.
it is really scary. I think obviously Spielberg, it's sort of maybe you don't think of it so much, but he probably does have a love for like old B monster movie type things because there's a little bit of that going on with Jaws as well because that
Yes.
the inspiration for Jaws is almost from, I forget the name of the film now, but like a Roger Corman movie type thing, so you can sort of see the inference there. Saw it once with my mother, and then it must have been like 2 weeks later or something. I saw it with my brother, and
Ah.
so I do have this story where in between, like I went to see something else at the cinema, and we could hear the dinosaurs from the next room from Jurassic Park, and that's just awesome.
Oh,
That's
that is
that's the way it
awesome.
should be. They were so big and so loud you could hear them from the other room. So that's
Ah, that's
that's
so
so great.
good.
We're getting a little bit of Jurassic Park in our screening. Everything really then you want from a great like family adventure, thrills and spills, tense moments, good horror moments. You have
Hmm.
characters that you believe in, like the
Yes.
characters are so well written and they cast it so well. Pretty much every bit of casting in this film is like just nailed on. Like,
100%.
and it goes to like obviously even characters who only have small roles where they just get the casting so well, and
Hmm.
the characters, obviously the core characters, go on a little arc as well and have like
Yes.
a journey. Obviously Alan Grant is a good example of that. We'll talk about the stuff with him, but yeah, really great stuff. And obviously it's not a particularly deep film, but it does have, which a lot of science fiction has, is obviously the theme of,
Hubris
yeah,
and
who.
arrogance.
That's a great
Yes.
word to put. Yeah, you get
Mm.
so caught up with, oh my god. Obviously, there's a line which we'll say later, but from the Goldblum character. But
Yes.
they get so caught up with, we can do this. They don't think
Hmm.
about should they do it, about the
Hmm.
consequence, and
Yes.
that is the main theme of the film. And the film just plays that theme out so well. There's so many great examples, and it's all in the storytelling. So that's why I think it's pretty much a perfectly written movie because
Oh, it really
you
is, isn't
get
it?
things that are set up. As I said, you get character arcs, hubris, and it's very clear because there's some characters in this who are like, there's clear divide between the good and the bad guys, and I guess in a way what's so good about the Hammond character played by Richard Attenborough is because it's Richard Attenborough, it's like really put, because obviously this is a guy who plays Santa Claus in a movie, let's
Yes. Yes.
forget, and he is just that giddy, cuddly, enthusiastic old guy, and obviously he has to grow up a bit over the course of the movie,
Yeah.
he has to realize then, oh my God, this wasn't such a good idea. And I think because it is Attenborough playing him and he's so perfect doing that, then even when things go wrong, you don't hate him. And obviously later he learns the lesson, but that's why the casting is so good, because he naturally has this naivety, this wide-eyed openness,
Yes.
where he's kind of like, oh, this is so great, look at all the joy it's going to bring, there's no harm in all this stuff. And
Yeah.
he's just naturally has that naivety, so there's nothing cynical about him, contrasted with certain people in the movie, like the Wayne Knight character, the
The
Dennis,
lawyer.
again,
Oh
the
no,
lawyer.
Dennis. Oh, Dennis. Yes.
Dennis, we'll definitely talk more about Dennis, but
Nedry. Yes,
it's
we will.
it's yeah, the lawyer's so funny, when he's jizzing off about the merchandise opportunity,
Oh, I know.
and it's just so
Oh,
perfect. Then that kind of came to pass because, of course, this movie in itself is a merchandise machine,
yes.
and that's obviously one
Yes.
of the big thing about Spielberg. His movies do become big merchandise sort of opportunities. But yeah, there's a funny joke in that scene, isn't it, where like the scientists in the room aren't backing Hammond up, and he's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
Hammond has that line. He's like, "You're supposed to come down and defend me against these characters, and the only one on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer." And Gennaro's just like,
oh,
"Thank
thank
you, thank
yeah."
you. That's great." Yeah.
So
I need to ask you before we go any
no,
further. Have you read the book?
no, but
Okay.
I do want to read it.
Yes, you should read the book. It is a very good read, but it is very different. Like a lot of the characterization in the book is softened for the movie. So I think like when you were talking about Richard Attenborough being cast as Hammond, and softens his character, Hammond in the book is so much worse than he is in the movie. Like in the movie, like you
Okay.
said, it's like he's caught up in the wonder of it, he's thinking about the joy it's gonna bring and stuff like that. But whereas in the book, he's just an arrogant schmuck, and he's really, really arrogant. He doesn't listen to
Right.
anyone. And Malcolm as well is a more extreme character in the book. So it is
Okay.
interesting to see how they adapt them. And I think, Jeff Goldblum, Jeff
He's
Goldblum
awesome.
as
He's
Malcolm
amazing.
Ian is like MVP of this movie. He is just
He has all the
so
best lines,
good.
doesn't he? Pretty much. There's
He
so many
does.
great lines with him.
It's just and I remember watching some behind the scenes, and they were talking about they love the dynamic between like Malcolm and Grant and Ellie, how like Malcolm is like just hitting on Grant's girl like right in front of Grant, and Grant's just having to deal with like this dude who's like just seriously just making passes at Ellie, and it's just those three and their dynamic is just so much fun, and I love those three characters. Alan Grant, as you were saying, has such a great arc in this movie, of learning to be a parent, and like because he obviously doesn't want kids, but he has to take the kids under his wing, so he has that little arc there. Sam Neill, now
Great
we
actor.
Australians, we like to claim Sam Neill, but he isn't actually Australian. He's
Oh, is he
from
not?
New Zealand. He's a Kiwi.
Okay.
He's from New Zealand.
From
So he's
from
not
Glasgow.
actually Australian, but we like to claim him because he's so cool. He's too cool for New Zealanders to have. So we're gonna take him instead.
Okay.
But Sam Neill is just such a great actor, and he's
Great
so
actor.
good as Alan. I think he has this real kind of like laid back kind of, so half the time he's a little bit like he doesn't quite know what's going on, but he's just kind of going with the flow. I love watching him interact with the kids because quite frankly he is around children the way I am around children. I'm not
Yeah.
great around kids, and I don't interact with them that well. And I think Alan as a character is great because he provides a lot of exposition, but it doesn't feel like exposition because he's an expert. He's the expert in this
Sure.
field, so it just feels like the expert giving, advice. And of course, we all love the scene where he tells the kid about how raptors attack you, the kid who's giving
Yeah.
him beef at the dig. And he does that great thing. And he's like, just scaring the shit out of his kid. And Ellie's just like, oh, dude, come on. And of course, that sets up a later scene, which we'll talk about as we move on to the
I
movie.
think.
But mm,
Yeah, I think that's a good scene just because it shows you how awkward he is with kids, but also it's just a warning for the film ahead because it's
yes,
like, yeah,
exactly.
don't
Mm.
underestimate the creatures.
It's like you were
don't
saying, the
let them run.
script for this film is so good. You know, you have moments like this that then set up other moments. And it's almost like we were talking about in our Stranger Things review recently. We were saying, you know, how the scripts, they have a cause and effect. You know, things you can see the domino effect, and you can see why things happened and the character motivation. And it's not, I remember one YouTuber I watched a few years ago was comparing Jurassic Park to Jurassic World, and he was saying that there were two types of storytelling. And so this is the first type, which is like, this happens because, you know, this happens because Nedry turns off the fence, because this happens because the raptors escape. But whereas Jurassic World, and we'll talk about this when we get to there, is a and then. So it's like, this happens and then this happens and then this happens, as opposed to a natural, this happens because. And so I think this movie really shows that you see the run-on effect. Nedry is unhappy because he's being underpaid, so he turns off the fences, which then allows the T-Rex to get loose, which then means that Grant and the kids get lost in the woods. And it's like, it's a great like run on. It's like a domino effect. You knock the domino over and it just perfectly just keeps going along, and everything just starts unfolding. And I think this script is so great, and it sets everything up so well. I mean, that opening scene alone is such a great scene, you know, giving us a glimpse into the dangers of these dinosaurs. Oh, and of course the mimetic shooter. We all love that bit, don't we?
Yeah.
But yeah, just that opening scene, so good, so tense. You know, you've got everyone standing around waiting for the dinosaur to be unloaded, and you don't even know which dinosaur it is. It's
Sure.
just, you just know that there's danger. And I remember hearing that when they were doing the marketing for this film, no marketing actually showed the dinosaurs. It just showed glimpses. So when like the
That's
first
great.
audience saw the dinosaur come on the screen, there were like audible gasps because they were so well
Yeah.
done. And the practical effects in this movie, oh, we'll talk about those. And the
So good.
animatronics, just so good. But yeah, such a great script, such a great opening scene. And I think all the characters get established really well too. Like, you know, like Hammond flies in on his helicopter into this dig, doesn't care that he's like kicking over dust and sand. He just walks into someone's trailer, pops this champagne that they've been saving, you know.
Yeah.
But then he does come across as very, you know, congenial and very friendly, and, you know, not
Sure.
really that arrogant, but you can tell that he's entitled, you know, he's used to getting his own way. He's used to just walking into
Yeah.
things and yeah, just having them there. And Hammond himself, like you said, goes on a bit of an arc this movie. He has to learn, you know, that to temper his own hubris, his own arrogance, to learn that there are things that you shouldn't mess with. And like you said, that's such a big theme of this movie, technology and the hubris that humans show when it comes to new developments and stretching the limits of science.
Because it's like, I mean, one of my big things that I always say with technology is then it's how you use it. I mean, there's
Mm,
lots of pluses with it because it's really like the internet. Anything that has that much power and there's so much of it, there's always going to
mm,
be good and bad. There's sort of
yeah,
no way around that. But it's how you use it. I mean, if you use it in the right way, then it can be like great and it can really work for you. But
yeah,
yeah, if it gets out of hand, if you start experimenting with it too much, you go into areas that you maybe don't understand. Because I mean that's almost part of like, because obviously like the Ian Malcolm character has some great arguments with that, where I think he has a line about, well, you didn't really do any of the research yourself, you just
yes, you
sort of came
stood on the
across
shoulders of
it.
those that came before.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah,
And so I
yeah.
do like some of that stuff. So
I
it's
think also there's a big theme about control and this illusion of control and this illusion that you can create these creatures and then expect to have control over creatures that you don't know anything about. I think Ellie points it out. You know, she says, you know, you've
yeah,
brought these creatures that are like, you know, thousands of years old. They don't know how to thrive in this kind of environment. You don't know what they're going to do. And, we see the events unfold. I think it's a great scene where they go into the lab and they meet BD Wong's character. And, they're seeing the raptors hatch. And, Malcolm's, they find out that, all the girls in Jurassic Park are, all the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are girls.
Yeah.
And Malcolm has that great line. It's like, how do you know they're girls? Does someone just go around and lift up all the dinosaur skirts? I mean,
Okay.
and then and then he points out, and he has, of course, his iconic line, "Life finds a way," and of course he's so right. And I think that this movie really shows that this sort of circumstance, you can't do this. You can't bring it's. I think Malcolm's right when he says, dinosaurs had their shot, and nature chose them for extinction. They had their natural evolution, and then they were extinct for a reason. There's a reason that we don't exist with these creatures. We see more and more evidence of this, and you see the disasters start to happen. You see, they think that they have control, but they don't, because, of course, Hammond has the continual line of "spared no expense." Just because something is more expensive doesn't mean it's going to work. And like every single time, spared no expense, spared no expense, spared no expense. It's like, you can't just keep throwing money at shit and expect that everything's going to be fine. Like, it's just not. Also, here's a question. Why would you make carnivores? Why? Like, dinosaurs, no one's seen a dinosaur, okay? You could make just one herbivore and everyone would flock to see it. Why would you make carnivores? And why would you make raptors? Like, dumb. Just, there's actually an interesting passage in the book where the scientist that's played by Wong is talking to Hammond, and he's pointing out to Hammond, he's like, look, no one knows what a dinosaur looks like. So we can really make these dinosaurs whatever we want to. So we can make them slower. We can make them less aggressive. We don't have to make them the way they were. And Hammond's like, no, we need authenticity. We need everything to be as it is. And like, Wong's character is getting really frustrated because he knows the dangers of making these dinosaurs. But he's got a point, we don't know what dinosaurs look like. Not a single human being on Earth knows what a dinosaur looks like. So you could literally make anything and people would flock to see it. You don't need to be making Dilophosaurus who's shooting venom at people. It's a fun little family film, but there's actually a lot of really deep stuff that you can get into with like the themes of science and progress, and do we do things just because we can? And that comes up to that line that you were talking about earlier from Ian, where your scientists were so concerned with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think whether or not they should.
I think that's one of my favorite movie lines ever, because it just nails it right there, and you can then apply that to so many other things in life, and you can apply it to other movies. So I think it's a great line, and I do really like how, because there's just something about Jeff Goldblum in that sort of role where he's such an oddball, but somehow he makes it sexy and charismatic and likable. Like, there's literally, because later on there's a scene where, because he gets injured at one point and he's all worn out, and for ages he's got his shirt wide open, and I bet he just loved that. It's like, okay, stop showing off your sexy chest. We get it, pal. You're hot, but he somehow makes that really weird Weasley character charismatic and sexy, but also you take him seriously later because he is making these very that's a sign of a really good character, because you do have to believe in him after a while. He can't just be the oddball, weirdo like the whole movie. And it's the same. That's what I like about, because they all start voicing concerns, and it sort of grounds them and says, these are sensible characters. These are sensible scientists. So they are people that we're going to sort of believe in. And obviously, when you were talking about like BD Wong, it's an example where like everyone in this movie is so well cast, because you've obviously got a very early Samuel L. Jackson appearance. He plays Ray, who really likes puffing on that cigarette. He barely lets
he does.
But he's obviously one of the more likable ones. He's quite sort of grounded and like sensible. But he's again, Sam Jackson doing great work. Obviously, Wayne Knight was the only choice to play Dennis. Really,
I know. Oh, Nedry's such a squirrely character, isn't he?
yeah.
It's just ugh.
And the stuff with like the fake can's pretty funny as well. Like the fake Colt can that they keep the embryo in.
Yeah.
That's pretty great. That's a pretty cool little gadget. But yeah, just the opening and when they first come into the park on the helicopter, and you get that beautiful, obviously John Williams music, which is
Yes.
a great theme as always. He's done so many great themes for Spielberg, but that's obviously right up there with his best work, and it just makes everything feel so important. You've got the line
Yeah.
"Welcome to Jurassic Park," and just the characters' faces, because obviously, as the Laura Dern character says later, I got caught up in it as well. They do
Yeah.
as scientists, because it's sort of like, this is their life's work. So there's definitely a side of them when they see this, oh my God, is this really happening, sort of thing.
Wonder. He does wonder so well, Spielberg, that awe that when you first see the dinosaurs, like just the characters' faces, which, hello, fantastic acting, because they were literally reacting to nothing. So I think we should give a big shout out
That's
to
a
all
good
of them for
point.
looking
Yeah.
so awed. But that first reveal of the Brachiosaurus, walking through, and you get that beautiful shot from like that low shot, so you really get the scale of how big the animal is. And I gotta say, for 1993, the CGI is really not that bad. Like it holds up
I
pretty
agree.
well. I mean, some of it looks a bit, you can tell it's a bit old, but for the most part, it's like
In general,
it's really
yeah,
good.
it's really,
Yeah,
really
considering
good stuff.
the movie's what, like 30 years old almost?
It's
So
nearly
like
30 years old. Yeah,
wow. Wow, that's
that's
crazy.
crazy. Yeah, that's crazy
Yeah.
in itself.
But
But
yeah, that first
yeah,
shot of the dinosaurs. And oh, can we talk about the animatronics in this movie? Because
yeah.
oh my God, they are amazing. Like that T-Rex, they actually built that T-Rex. It was like an actual full-scale animatronic. I love behind the scenes, so I've watched like so much behind the scenes stuff for this, and just seeing them build that T-Rex and the way it would move. They said that like sometimes some camera like crew members would like play jokes on other crew members, like they'd be walking past the T-Rex and they'd make it move so that people would get like scared. And I think obviously, for the actors to react to have those animatronics, the scene where the T-Rex comes through the roof of the car with Tim and Lex, that was
Yeah.
like an accident. The animatronic actually just
Oh
fell
wow,
through.
okay.
So the reactions you're seeing from the kids are like
We're
genuine
real.
reactions. Because,
Yeah,
I mean, fair enough. Even if you knew it was fake, like this big ass dinosaur coming through your
yeah,
roof, like I would probably scream too. So just everything about them. The raptors are so good when you see them. They're so creepy. The Triceratops is one of my favorite of the animatronics because it's just amazing to see them be able to get like up close and personal. Poor Laura Dern talks about in the behind the scenes features how every time she goes out, some little kid will be like, "Did you wash your hands after the dinosaur poop?" She's like, "I'm a highly respected actor, and that's what I'm known for, dinosaur poop." So
yeah.
yeah, but those animatronics and those
Oh
special
yeah,
effects,
the big
yes,
mountain of
yeah, as
poop.
Malcolm says,
That's
that is
really
one
fun.
big pile of shit.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
when she sticks her hands into the poop and she's looking at it, she walks off and Malcolm's like, "She's tenacious." And Grant's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, you have no idea."
Yeah.
Just some great little character moments like that. But yeah, no, I love the animatronics. I think they're
Oh yeah.
fantastic. And I would opt for animatronics over CGI any day. Even though CGI has gotten so good, there is just something about like a tactile, actual animatronic that you can see that it's moving, that it's blinking its eyes. It's just so, I think part of the magic for me comes from those animatronics. What about you?
Oh yeah, definitely. We've said this a lot with our horror reviews, how a
Mm,
lot of times practical effects and stuff are much more effective. And yeah,
hmm.
there's so much care and attention put into these creature designs, and definitely you do get the more realistic sort of emotions from the creatures, from the dinosaurs as a
Yeah.
result. Yeah, you get the combination of, as I said, at times they do look calm and adorable, and then at others they become like these really scary monsters.
Yeah.
The kids are really good in this. Like
Yes,
they feel like a natural brother and sister, and
they do. Yes.
they squabble and play off each other really nicely. And obviously they go on a little bit of a journey with obviously Grant in particular, because he does become more of a father figure to them. And obviously by the end of it, Lex has an important part to play, which we'll talk about when we get there. But really well cast, the two kids in it. They do.
Yes, I love the two kids.
Very natural. Yeah,
I love
very.
Tim. I love Tim
Yeah,
following Grant around the
that's
cars,
really
trying
fun.
to talk to him, and Grant's just like, "Oh, I don't want to talk to you." Tim's just like popping up wherever he is. So cute.
Yeah, because Grant's such a great grouch. Yeah, he's such a
Yeah,
natural.
he is, isn't he?
Really, really, and obviously the contrast with Ellie, because she's the more bubbly one and her sort of
Yeah.
smart and stuff. And I sort of feel in a way that Ellie makes Grant acceptable in a way, sort of thing, because she is like the other way around sort of thing. And obviously she knows him, so she does know then. Yeah, there is a bit more to him, but we obviously see him start to come out of his shell, because like the scene when he plays the prank on them on the electric fence.
That's so cute.
Yeah, I think that's an example that he's coming out of his shell a bit and is like getting more looser. But that's a really funny sort of scene.
I also love at the beginning when they're getting into the cars and he's locked Tim in one of the cars. He turns around and Lex is standing right there and she's like, "She said I should ride with you because it'd be good for you." And then Grant looks at Ellie and Ellie's just like, she's just like having a little laugh. It's so cute.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. So I
just
think
great characters.
Yeah, the characters are so good and the casting, and we'll obviously talk about the kills in a moment, because they'll build up to really the first big kills. But one scene I like, sort of, I think, which is a bit before like the opening sort of first kills and stuff, is I actually really like when Alan and Ellie come across that like wounded dinosaur.
Yes, the Triceratops.
It's a really moving scene, because you see then they care about their work, they care about like this animal essentially, and it's that mix of they're really excited because this is the first time they actually see a dinosaur of any kind, so it's like that. Again, their life's work. They're about the animal itself. And obviously Ellie wants to stay behind, which becomes an important plot point because they obviously get separated and stuff. But it's, it's actually a really tender little scene to watch play out. It's really beautiful, actually. Yeah.
It is. And you can see both of them are crying because they're so overcome with the emotion of seeing like a dinosaur up close. And, Grant's talking about how Triceratops was his favorite and now she's like the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And you see him leaning on the dinosaur and listening to it breathing. And Ellie's really
that's
with,
really good.
With why it's sick. It is. That's a beautiful scene. And like I said, the animatronic in that scene is just gorgeous. And I think the actors themselves have talked about like how part of the emotion in that scene was actually just being able to interact with the animatronic, and because it was so real and so lifelike, and its eyes would move and it would breathe, and that is a great scene. And I think that is one of the things that's so great about this movie is it does those scenes really well. I mean, it balances it out with like the horror and the adventure really well. So you get some really beautiful emotional scenes that like balance out the horror and the the craziness that's going on with the rest of the film. So it's definitely a great scene to highlight.
I assumed the first kill was going to be Dennis, but it actually turns out to be the lawyer.
Oh, so the T-Rex attack happens before Nedry dies. I forgot about that. Or does Nedry die first?
Is that Dennis?
That's Dennis. Yes. Sorry, I was
he
calling
definitely
Nedry.
dies after, because I was expecting him to die first.
Okay.
I will just say on Dennis, he's just as annoying in virtual form as he is in reality, because he gets that. There's that thing on his thing, isn't it? When they're locked out of the.
Didn't say the magic word. And then Samuel Jackson's character was like, please, God, I hate this hacker shit. Okay,
Yeah,
really, it isn't.
I just love that he's as annoying in virtual form as he is in real life. So great. But
Oh, his death is like, man, that's intense and creepy and yeah, all sorts of bad.
they, yeah, because they do a good job with this death. Well, with the deaths in general, because they do make it a scary movie, and obviously
Yes.
they do go to adult places on occasions, but they obviously keep it to a level where it's still going to be suitable for a family audience. So they
Mm.
actually do a good job with that. It's quite well played because with his death, they obviously cut away, and it's quite a tense scene because he's obviously staggering up that hill. There's lots of rain. He actually drops the can at one point, like as he's
Yes.
like, which is sort of perfect. He actually drops the can, but yeah,
Yeah.
and you get the reveal of it's in the Jeep with him. But
Mm.
it's almost good direction because it cuts away and you just see the Jeep shaking. So it's like
Yeah.
just imagine what's happening to him, and he's
But
sort
even the build up when the dinosaur first appears, because again, with the script, we've already been told about Dilophosaurus, on the tour. So we
yeah.
know that this is not like a benign like dinosaur. Like this is dinosaur is gonna fuck him up. And we know that, but Nedry doesn't know that. So I love that he's like trying to treat it like a dog and he's like, here, get a stick, give a stick. Can you fetch? And he throws it, and he's like, no wonder you're extinct. And then
And again,
and then it keeps
hubris.
following him. Yes,
That
exactly.
comes
Arrogance, thinking
yeah,
that
it's like
yeah, where
because they got
yeah.
a stink, we
Hmm.
overlook them, and it's like, yeah, we don't really know them, and that's the problem, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes. And then yeah, he said, and oh my gosh, did you notice that when it spits the venom at him, you can hear it sizzle? So it's like it's burning his skin away. It's nasty.
oh
And
yeah,
then yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, when it pops up in the Jeep, that's a great moment, just a
yes,
really horrifying moment and so good. So yeah, that one's a great death. But of course, one of the best scenes in this movie, one of the most iconic scenes, is the T-Rex attack because I mean, that scene just so well directed, so much terror. The cup with the thuds is obviously like an iconic shot in movies. Like everyone knows that reference of the water shaking in the cup. Like it's been referenced in so many different things.
yeah. I think that's got
So good.
repeated a lot since, hasn't it? But
Hmm.
it's just that
Yeah.
attention to detail. It's that moment where they first realise something's up, sort of thing.
It's so effective, that scene, because you've got the rain, the storm, they're all stuck in these cars, they're all just kind of sitting there a little bit bored, and then you just hear that thud in the distance, and then they look out and they're like, where's the goat? And then you just see
Yeah,
the T-Rex's head come up, and then of course the horror as they see the fence that they think is electrified, snapping one by one, and then we get that glorious shot of the T-Rex and all her wonder coming through. And of course, the lawyer runs off. Yes, the lawyer on the toilet. Now, this was the one of the. I remember when this
that's
movie came
pretty
out,
fun.
I didn't know anything about this movie except that some dude died on the toilet. Like, that was
Yeah,
the one thing that, like, everyone was talking about was like, oh, this dude dies on the toilet. Like, that was the one thing I heard about this film. Couldn't have
yeah,
happened to a nicer character. I mean, what a
yeah.
dick just leaving
Cheeky
those
shit,
kids to
sort of
fend by
boy.
themselves. Poor things. And poor Lex being like, he left us. And then she has, a moment with Grant later on when she's all like, he left us, and Grant's like, I am not going to do that. But of
Yeah,
course, that scene, those poor kids with the T-Rex coming through the roof and just the terror of that scene. Oh, plus Malcolm's got a great line there where he's just like, boy, do I hate being right all the time. you know,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, that scene is one of my favorite scenes. What about you? Do you enjoy that one?
Definitely, yeah. It's
Mm.
definitely very tense. So there's some
Yeah.
standout like di direction of horror scenes in this
Yes.
movie.
Yes.
And because I mean, obviously you can have little nitpicks. Like last night, Cindy was like, "Well, in reality, that car probably would have been squashed easily." But
True.
you just have to go with it. I mean,
Yeah.
you're there in the scene, and it does feel very
Yeah.
tense. And as you said, I mean, yeah, it's a really interesting set piece because of the windscreen on them and just crawling away. And obviously, I like then Alan and Ian have to work together to like help them
Yes.
and stuff. So you have these characters who have been a bit at loggerheads so far, and they actually work together, do the responsible thing, and yeah, it really builds where you get a number of scenes that are really interesting and really tense set pieces because you have like the Jeep falling through the trees at one point, you
Yes.
know, and they have to get out the way there.
Poor
like,
Tim. Yeah.
and that's really good stuff again. And obviously it's a really cute scene, isn't it? Them falling asleep in the tree and
Yeah.
them starting to bond and he's starting to become like a father figure type thing.
Out of the tree, and they get on the ground and the car falls on them, and Tim's like, well, we're back in the car. Well, at least we're out of the tree.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just little bits like that. And like Lex and Tim have some little sibling moments, you know, where they're teasing each other, like you mentioned earlier, that they're very believable siblings. So yeah, like when they go to climb a tree and Tim's just like, oh, I hate trees. And Lex is like, oh, they don't bother me. Well, yeah, well, you went in the last one. And it's just like little moments like that. And yeah, I really like seeing them cuddle up with Grant and, you know, it goes along with their storyline. And then they get to see some good dinosaurs. We get to see the Brachiosaurus, and that's another beautiful moment where you get to see Grant come close to close. And then, of course, they discover the eggs. And they discovered that, you know, because they used frog DNA, some of the dinosaurs are switching from female to male. And that just compounds, you know, Malcolm's whole life finds a way. And I think Grant even says Malcolm was right. He said that this would happen. So it's just great the way it all kind of plays out in the movie.
I take the risk in the first place, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because there's always, even if you think it's a fraction of a chance, because of the potential consequences, why take the chance in the first place?
Exactly, because we can do something, we should, but it's like, no, you have to stop and think about these things. And this movie's a great lesson in that, and what happens when your hubris gets out of control.
Yeah, and it's just a good example of there is choice with these things, and you can obviously it's like someone with like a gun type thing, you know, in a way it only becomes dangerous and harmful, you know. I mean, if you want to go, I don't know, shooting practice whatever with gun, you know, that's your choice. It wouldn't be my idea of fun, but it's sort of your choice. But it only really becomes dangerous, you know, if it gets out of control in your
if you're
hands.
careless with it. Yes, and you lose control of it.
You're the one with the gun. I mean, use it sensibly, so to speak. So it's kind of that thing where, yeah, technology can be good if you use it right. It can also be very bad if you use it wrong. And that's
and as we get towards the end of the film, we find out that, like, their biggest mistake was breeding these raptors, because, you know, the T-Rex has been our main threat up until this point. But as we move towards the end of the film, we start to see the real threat are the raptors. And what I love is that there's a beautiful build up to the raptors being the bad guys in the end. Little hints here and there that tell us exactly how dangerous these guys are, so that when we finally see them at the end, it doesn't feel like it comes out of nowhere. So like I was talking about earlier, you have Grant, who gives us that great speech about how raptors will work in packs to lure you, and then as you're watching one, another will suddenly come and attack you from the side, which of course leads into that fantastic scene with Muldoon. Muldoon's another great character, by the way. We haven't spoken about him, but he is awesome. He's such a badass, Muldoon.
Yeah, because he's reasonably likable, isn't he? He's not too bad, you know.
He's not too arrogant. He's basically there to just tell them you've gone a little too far. But like even he, like at the beginning, like so we've got that scene at the end where he plays into that trap, you know. So when the raptor does come out of nowhere, when you have that clever girl, it's like it doesn't feel like it's come out of nowhere, because we've already been told by Grant that this is how they work. So when the raptor does suddenly pop out, you go, oh yes, like Grant was talking about this. So it's a great connection. But I also love, like, when they're hatching, when they're seeing the hatching, and Grant's like, "What breed is this?" And they're like, "Oh, that's raptor." And he's like, "You bred raptors?" And you just see his whole face just change. And then they go and they see the raptors. Like, we don't physically see them, but we see the cage. And Muldoon's talking about how they've been like attacking the fence at different parts to test for weaknesses. He talks about how the main raptor killed like all the other raptors except for two. Like, there's all this great build up so that when the raptors come out at the end, they are freaking terrifying because you've gotten so much build up.
Built that threat up. And Muldoon, he does actually like sacrifice himself a bit for Ellie as well.
He does.
I think that definitely puts him on the good side of things. One thing about the science of it, because at one point there's this debate over whether they should shut down the whole system type thing. Like, that's a solution, and obviously that's quite a big scene with Ray. And again, I quite like that scene because it's like the unknown. We've never done this before, but it is an answer. But also, I like that there's that debate over whether it's a good idea, if it's a risk that's worth taking. And that's probably just an example of this sort of thing where, because things have gotten out of hand, they're sort of put in the situation where they have to make judgment calls like this, which they can't say one way or the other whether it's going to work out because they've never done it before. And it almost links to the stuff with the dinosaurs about, well, really, we've never done this before. We've never, had a park with dinosaurs. So there's no way anyone can say for 100% that it's a good idea and it's going to work out. It's a similar thing with this, but this is obviously a consequence of that, where they have to make a judgment call. And so I like that. I like the stakes there and tension. I do have a question, actually, because it confused me a bit, because obviously we were speaking about Muldoon, and he obviously ended up dying. But there's a really good horror scene with Ellie, and this is, I think, what shows that Spielberg probably is a fan of like old horror movies and understands horror, because the scene with the arm is a great horror moment.
That's an iconic moment. Yeah,
because she's in like, is it like a power grid room or something?
So she's gone to the main power source to turn everything on manually. Because Arnold went out there, so Samuel Jackson's character went there. They realized that it was taking too long, so Ellie and Muldoon went to check on him and to turn on the system. So that's where she is.
Okay, so and it's a really good scene, and obviously the arm that comes loose in the hand, because at first she thinks it's. Does she think it's Muldoon?
She thinks it's. No, she thinks it's Arnold. So she says, "Oh, Mr. Arnold," and then she moves away, and she's like, "Oh," because she's come away with a loose arm. So
okay. So I was going to ask you, because at the time I assumed it was Muldoon, just because I was expecting him to die, and then he dies in like the next scene or something. So whose arm was it?
Samuel Jackson's. So that's Samuel Jackson's arm.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, because so they turn off. It's black. Maybe you're just watching on a weird screen. No, it's definitely a black arm.
It looked white to me. Maybe it was just the lighting.
I think it might have been the lighting. No, it's definitely a black arm.
Okay. I'm annoyed now that he died, because I probably didn't realise he died. Oh, damn it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We only saw the arm. So maybe the rest of the body is still somewhere surviving. You never know. He could just be hiding. We never actually. I mean, unlikely, given what we know about the raptors. But given that we didn't see the rest of the body, maybe he'll pop up in a new movie with just one arm. Who knows? We can only hope.
That's great. As I said, that's a great horror moment.
It is.
It's one of those scenes that says Spielberg understands horror.
Yes, he really does.
It's a great
Another great scene, as we're getting towards the end of the movie, is of course the kitchen set scene, which I absolutely love. So Grant gets the kids, he gets the kids back to the visitor center, and the freaking raptors appear. And that's such a great moment of like Lex watching Tim, and her jelly starts to shake, and Tim's like, what? And then you see just the shadow of the raptor come up behind. And again, it's another great horror moment. And then when they're in the kitchen and the goddamn raptors are like stalking them, and it's such a tense and terrifying scene because these poor kids, they've been through so much. Poor Timmy's been electrocuted and everything, and then it's just them stuck in this kitchen. And I love when Lex is like, Timmy, what is it? And then she's just like, oh, it's inside. And you just the horror in her voice when they realize that the raptors are in there. And then the kids get a great little moment where, they manage to lock a raptor in the freezer. I love Lex running out of nowhere screaming to push the freezer.
Yeah, they work together, don't they? So that
they do.
gives them a nice little scene. And that's a really scary scene with them having to creep about and hide in cupboards, and you're not quite sure where the raptors are going to appear. And I like the shot, obviously, the breathing on the window sort of thing. It's very iconic.
That is a great shot. Yeah.
And I think obviously that because later on, towards the end of the scene where obviously Ellie and Alan show up, there's just some great stuff in that museum space. It just seems like a fitting, almost like an assault course type thing. A fitting sort of space to have all this stuff going down.
It's a great final set piece. And of course we get to see Lex help to save the day because they've had mentions before of her being a hacker. So she's able to hack the system and get them all up online. So I really like, again, that's something that's laid down earlier, but then comes into play later. You think it's just a throwaway line. Tim's calling her a computer nerd, just being a typical younger brother. And she's like, I'm not a nerd, I'm a hacker. And you just think it's like a throwaway line until you get to the end and you're like, oh no, she's actually going to use these skills to kind of, help the situation. So again, that's a great example of this script working so well.
Yeah, great character moment, and it's something that does remind me of these classic family type films, these Spielbergian type film. It sort of reminds me a bit of that scene in The Goonies where like that character has to play the right piano notes to get them out of the situation, and it's like a character beat for her because she up to that point hasn't necessarily been featured as much as some of the characters, so it's kind of something which she can only do sort of thing, and it gets them out of a jam. And it's similar here. Obviously it's only really this girl who can hack the system and get the security back, and so it's really good nice stuff.
And then that final set piece with them crawling down the dinosaur skeletons as the raptors come in. That's a great scene. And again, very tense. It's a very good horror scene, because the bad guys are there, the raptors are there. And this isn't like, like some bad guy just wielding a knife at you. These are prehistoric creatures that you don't have any weapons against, like what are you going to do when a raptor comes at you? It's terrifying. I mean, of course, in comes Rexy to save the day. That's a great. And I remember the first time I saw this movie, I was really like blown away that was how it ended, because I was like, how are they going to get out of this? Like they're literally about to get eaten, and then Rexy just comes in, and I love that you have that iconic shot of her roaring while the banner falls down. Dinosaurs rule the earth, and it's just such a great final shot there. And I really like that this movie has a quiet ending. You've had all the big fanfare, everything, and you've got that great line from Grant, like, Mr. Hammond, I have decided not to endorse your park. And Hammond's like, me too. But then you have that beautiful
that's actually the last line of the movie, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you sort of expect then there's going to be something else said on the helicopter, but there's actually not.
There isn't. It works though. I think the silence works really well. It's beautiful because you see where everyone is at that point. So you see that Grant has got the kids. He's accepted being like the father figure for them. Ellie's smiling at him. Malcolm's looking like he's about to perish. They need to get him to a hospital. And Hammond's just kind of sadly looking at his cane.
Courageous,
and it's just it's a beautiful, soft ending to what is a very big, brash movie. And so I really like that they end it on that quiet character moment. I think it really emphasizes how good the characterization is in this film, that you can end such a big film in such a quiet way with just these characters that we've gotten to know. It's just a really, really, and the beautiful soft piano theme playing over. It's just a gorgeous ending.
Yeah, the music's obviously so epic, and it's that example of what cinema can do with just acting and with the
Hmm.
mood of a scene where they don't actually have to say anything. So it's just the
Yeah,
fact that Ellie smiles at Alan, he smiles back. Obviously, he's with the kids, and it sort of cuts
yeah,
around the characters, and their facial expressions just sells it, just tells the story, and
it is.
the
Yeah.
music sort of does the rest of the work, and it's just a gentle sort of scene as they drift away.
It is. Malcolm's still there with his shirt off because
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have
of
to have
course.
Malcolm
I
with his
mean,
shirt off
yeah, I think Goldblum must have had that in his contract
in
or
his
something. Yeah,
contract. Oh,
as much
you
as possible.
I'll tell you something funny. In one of the behind the scenes, it was like 25 years later, Jurassic Park, and Sam Neill was talking about how he read the script and how Jeff Goldblum's Malcolm character, he's like, yeah, he's described as like this nerdy kind of, mathematician. He's like, and then you see Jeff come on and he's got his shirt off and he's magnificent. And I'm like, that's awesome. Sam Neill's like, he looks so good, he's so beautiful, he's all big and magnificent. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? So even the co-stars are completely taken with Jeff
Yeah,
Goldblum.
yeah, yeah.
Everyone wants him. But oh, such a great film. So, what would you give Jurassic Park? What is your rating for this film?
I'm gonna go with the 10. I think it is the perfect film, and I think it's only gone up over time because I think when you grow up and when you watch it more, you actually notice these things more. So it only goes up over time, and it's an example of the perfect sort of family blockbuster. And sadly, we very rarely get now, if at all. I mean, pretty much from
Yeah,
mainstream, and when it comes to family films, nothing really touches a film like this. And we said
no.
about all the details of the script and the characters, and that's why it's so frustrating looking at the standard of mainstream cinema today, because we've got stuff like that in the past where you can hold it up and say, yes, this is the standard. This is what a big budget movie can be. And yeah, it's just everything they sort of nail, really. I think it holds up. Obviously, as we said, it's nearly 30 years now, and I just enjoy watching it. Every time I rewatch it, I get so much out of it. Obviously, got a lot out of this discussion as well. So it's I think it's probably out of this and Jaws for my favorite Spielberg. Although obviously I really like the Indiana Jones films as well. So Rages of the Lost Ark maybe I would put up there, but I think yeah, possibly this and Jaws are my top two Spielberg. So really good stuff. So I'm gonna go with a 10, definitely.
Very nice. Well, I think I will also go with a 10 because there's
Um,
really nothing to fault with this movie. Fantastic script, sets up everything so well, beautiful cause and effect throughout the whole film. You can track every single event and see exactly what led to this. Fantastic characterization, amazing casting. Every single cast member in this is so good. I am so excited. Like the new movie, I'm not that excited for, but I am so excited to see the three original cast
and
come
they've
back. Like
brought
Laura
them
Dern,
back.
Sam Neill, yeah, Jeff
That's
Goldblum.
great.
So good. And just whenever, I mean, I rewatch this film a lot. It's one of my favorite movies. And every time I watch it,
Mm.
I still get the same feeling of awe and excitement. It never lets me down, you know? Every watch is just better and better. That score is beautiful. The directing is great. This is my favorite Spielberg film. I absolutely love
Yeah.
this. Up there with, I also love E.T. I have a big soft spot for
Mm.
E.T. Love E.T., but it doesn't give me quite the same wonder that this one does. So,
Yeah.
like I said, because I'm a bit of a dinosaur nerd as well, this just like scratches my dinosaur itch. So I just love all the animatronics. I love everything about this film is just fantastic. So yes, 10 out of 10 for me. Going into the sequels will be a different matter, but the first film is so solid and so good, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, 10 out of 10, definitely agree. Such a good movie.
Yeah, I can't really pick out a fault, but the sequels will be interesting because there's
Yes.
definitely ups and downs, and you do get contrasting reviews with the sequels. So
I think the sequels seem to be very divisive. Like, there's no general consensus on like which is the best sequel. It just seems like each sequel has its detractors and its admirers. Except maybe number three. Number three seems to be pretty like agreed upon. It's not great, but as we go through them, we'll see how our opinions change. I
yeah.
haven't watched the sequels that often, not to the original. So it'll be interesting to go back and rewatch them. But it's such a great start to this series. Like, this film is just so good. Definitely one of my favorites. So it's been really fun discussing it and rewatching it and having a discussion over it.
Yeah, it's a good one to talk about.
Mm.
Definitely lots to talk about. So that's obviously the first Jurassic Park. So if you want to give us your thoughts in the comments below, obviously share your memories of it. What, if you were around or if you remember seeing it at the cinema at the time, share some memories about that, or just your general impressions and experiences with it. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe. As always, share us out on social media. We'll be back quite soon with the next movie. We're obviously going to do this franchise and work our way up to the new film for the summer. Yeah, you can also find me on Patreon, patreon.com/boardnow. You can also find us, in some case, some of our episodes anyway, on podcast, on audio form podcast. So the name of the podcast is Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid, horror
Nice.
franchise podcast. So you can find, like, I stuck our Candyman review up on one of the platforms here. So some episodes on Podbean, there's some episodes on Amazon Music, couple of others, iHeartRadio randomly, which is a New York sort of based one, so you might only be able to get that in New York. But yeah, there's a few episodes out there now if you want to download the podcast and listen to it that way. So it's another way to support our content. And obviously, as I hinted at, we do horror movie reviews. We do horror franchise reviews. We also do some TV, like we did. We're doing Stranger Things at the moment. We're sort of halfway through the first season of that. So if you have an interest in that show, you can check out our stuff. So we do a fair bit. We do top 10 lists as well, where we alternate between film and TV lists. So generally, that's once a month, ideally. But Rachel, if you want to plug your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel McDonald, video essays on TV shows and movies. My Tumblr and my Twitter accounts are also on my YouTube, so follow me everywhere. And Keith usually puts a link in the description, so come and find me and follow me.
Okay, thanks for listening, guys. Take care, and we'll see you again soon. Okay, goodbye.